Hey, welcome back to the Conversion Clinic. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make SEO-friendly URL structures. Now, it's a lot simpler than you think, but it depends on your situation, how big your website is, if you've got a blog or whatever. And I'm going to go through some of this stuff in a bit of a checklist style so that you can follow along. Before we do though, if you don't know how to actually edit the permalink or the URL, or we call it a slug in the SEO world, all you need to do, depending if you're on WordPress, you might find a section somewhere in there, or using plugins like Yoast, or I'm using RankMath here, where you can actually change the permalink structure. But if you're using Squarespace or something else, there's usually an option there. Just do a bit of digging, use ChatGPT, or just go into the, how-to guides for that. But anyway, let's go through it. This was quite a fun one. I did some research across the board from Google, from all sorts of things, so that you didn't have to do it yourself. And then I found a few interesting things. So before we get into any of this list here, I just want to talk about the main principle of what makes an SEO-friendly URL. So in a nutshell, Google is expecting to see URLs that are clean, very easy to read, any human can read them, as they say here, human-readable URLs, and not URLs like this, which is a bit like weird and looks like a bot should be crawling it or something like that. And in a nutshell, I've gone through in the past videos from John Mueller. Oh, that's Neil Patel. John Mueller explaining like, hey, it doesn't really matter. Just make the URL simple and easy to understand. And so that seems to be the general theme here, or consensus around this. So that's a main takeaway. Let's go into the list and let's go one by one. So the biggest question people ask is, should I inject the keyword? And the answer is yes. Okay, so John Mueller and some of the SEOs out there say sometimes no, it's not. But from what I'm seeing time and time again, that it is a huge ranking factor. And it's endorsed by a lot of the SEOs, including Backlinko here, Brian Dean, and all sorts of places. And you don't get penalized for keyword stuffed URLs apparently. So that's back in 2022. Who knows if it's changed. I personally, across the hundreds of websites we've built, I personally inject the keyword as is. As you'll see in this one here, I've injected the exact keyword in the URL verbatim, the one that I'm trying to go for. Okay, so that's a big ranking factor. Number 2, adding dashes. So this is quite important as well, adding the dashes, and Backlinko, Brian Dean explains here that you need to add dashes between the actual keyword to tell the bots that they are separate words. These are 3 separate words. Okay, and so if you did any coding school or not, they teach you this as a 101, that you either use an underscore or a dash. But I went to Google's resources and they said use a dash, not an underscore. Okay, so always use a dash to separate the words that you have, and you can see we've done that across a lot of our pages here. So let's go to the next one, crawl depth. Should I care about it for the URLs? So if you don't know already, crawl depth is a thing that Google has where they kind of lend their bot to crawl your website for free. And not all websites are equal. Some websites, you've got big websites with over 10,000 pages, unique pages, and 1 million unique views and stuff. And then you've got other smaller websites with like 12 or 10 pages. Okay, so obviously Google isn't going to allocate as much of their bot time to your 10-page website versus this 1,000-page one over here. So it's quite important to understand that there are limits involved. And the reason I'm telling you this is because how it affects your URL structure is there's this thing called depth. Right, crawl depth. And crawl depth is kind of how easy is it from the home page to get to other pages. And there's some layer of depth involved. And if the bot crawls the first level of your website from the home page, like all the direct links from the home page, and then the second level and stuff, and it runs out of time or budget or allowance, then it's going to probably stop crawling and then wait until the next cycle before it crawls your site again. So as you can imagine, that affects your indexation and the way that your website is actually crawled. So it's very important. And they say here, John Mueller, that's this guy over here from Google, he explains that as it moves away from the home page, we'll probably think it's a less critical page. So therefore, they're going to make sure they deprioritize it in that way, or leave it until next time or whatever. So I'm saying that is because you might want to really consider how many of these like folders or crawl depth, or how easy it is to get to that page that you've hidden so far down in your website, and decide on the internal linking strategy. Now that's more to do with internal linking, but sometimes it can affect with the actual subfolder system. That's what we call an SEO myth, but I've found that to be the case anyway. But you might have your own experiences. So let's go on to the next one. We have, should I add categories to the URLs? So what I mean by that is, should I have like /blog and /digital marketing and then / have this blog post? Neil Patel has an opinion around this, saying that maybe it's a good idea to add the not the double dash there. He says not to add that in there, but like have conversion rate optimization as like the category and then / the post name. He explains that it's a good idea to do that if you've got a massive website and you talk about a lot of different topics. So it's a good idea to separate those categories and add it into your URL structure. But if you've got smaller websites under 100 pages, it probably doesn't matter as much. So you probably don't need to do that for those kind of websites. Again, you don't want to go overkill with this kind of stuff. You don't want to do too much SEO where it's like it doesn't really make a big difference. Because in a lot of videos that John Mueller does, he makes a lot of comments around like it doesn't matter here and it doesn't matter, we don't care about this and we don't care about, like he actually says that a lot about different things, and you have a lot of SEOs who are a bit skeptical about some of his answers. But I think there's some truth to what he's saying as well. Like it really depends on the use case, where you are at, how big your website is, how you're internally, like there's a lot of different factors, as you know. So it depends really applies here. In a nutshell, that one, if you only write about one topic, don't add your category to the URL structure, but if you write about multiple, then probably do it. Are short URLs better? Well, in this video, actually, John says it doesn't matter. He prefers things that are under 1,000 characters long. So what I mean by that is your full URL structure, this one here, ideally should be under 1,000 characters. Now that's a freaking lot of characters. And so it's a bit confusing, like 1,000, that seems to be too much. But then you got other places like across even RankMath. I use RankMath for this website here. And you've got other sources around here around the maximum length for the URL slug. And the URL slug is different from the actual full URL. I get that. But you've got places that, and they probably should be distinguished, the full URL length versus the slug length, which the slug just means the little slug in here, right? That's a slug. And then this is the full URL, okay? And so a lot of places like this, they'll recommend under 75 characters. As you can see in the tool here, it says under 75. So that's probably the length that you should apply for your actual slug. But in terms of the full URL, I keep getting time and time again across all these articles and things like that, that you should make it really, really simple, stupid, where it's kind of like the least words in the URL, the better in general. Like don't try to make it too long. So that's probably the rule of thumb here. Like only probably inject the exact keyword that you're trying to go for and nothing else. Don't include the full URL post name and things like that. Like don't include this entire thing here because it doesn't matter. Like it's actually making it harder to read for people. So don't add that entire thing. Only add probably the keyword, which is psychology of advertising, whatever it may be. Okay, so that's a good idea to follow that. And also, he mentioned in that video that shorter URLs, like if you've got 3 pages and they're kind of all the same content, and you are telling Google to prioritize one of them instead of the other 3, Google is going to automatically, or try to favor the shorter one, as Jeff says. So there's some truth to having shorter URLs because the bots seem to favor it more. Even though he says it doesn't matter, well, it obviously matters, right? And so if we go down to the last one, we've got, should I change existing URLs for SEO? So for example, if you've got a long ass like URL all the way down here and they added the full title, for example, and you're like, wow, that's too long. Should I change it so I've got only the keyword in there? It's a yes or no answer. So normally I tell my team to do this if the page itself hasn't really built up much SEO value. So I use Ahrefs or SEMrush to see the stats on that particular page. Like, is it ranking? Has it got much backlinks? Whatever. If it doesn't, and it's got very low kind of backlinks and things like that, or very low search volume, then I tell my team to, go ahead and change the URL structure. That's totally fine. Go optimize that. But if you've already built up a history and you change that URL structure, Google is going to treat that page as a totally separate page. Even if you change one character in that URL, Google is going to treat that as a totally new page. Okay. And so you'll lose all of your rankings that you had before, even after redirecting it. So for example, if you redirect the old URL to the new URL, it still can take several months to recover those rankings. And I'm not sure if it's in this video or his other video I just watched before. He said that it can take several months to a year or more for that URL to like recover back to what it was, even after a redirect. So that's pretty crazy to understand. So there are pretty big repercussions if you have a big website, you're considering changing all the URL structures, you are going to lose a lot of your rankings. Okay, so that's very, very important to understand that. In a nutshell, how do you make SEO-friendly URL structures? Try to make it human, try to make it readable, like really simple, easy to understand. If you want your URLs to be crawled faster, make sure that they're closer to the homepage in terms of like have a lot of links to all those pages you want from the homepage, because they can take precedence out of that. Google says in here that they keep crawling the homepage regularly, so it's anything pointing from the homepage to the internal pages have high importance. So that's another thing to add. But anyway, that's everything. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll answer them as fast as I can. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks.